All right, I'm a little late, but Pro Football Focus dropped their top 101 players of the 2024 season. So let's see how many Texas Longhorns made the list we discuss on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Longhorns, this show. Jonathan Davis, your host. Today's episode of Locked On Longhorns brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns, once again, the Pro Football Focus Top 101. How many Longhorn players made the list from a great season that Texas had? Also, how many players did Texas go up against as a bonus on the PFF Top 101? I think the answer would surprise you. Then in the second segment, I thought about this. Wanted to have a little fun today. One player from each side of the ball, offense and defense, that I would add to this 2025 team. Yeah. One player on each side of the ball, offense and defense, that I would add to this 2025 team from the Sark era, right? And it can't be any player that's leaving the team now, right? Like that was just on the team last year. So they have to be at least 1 year removed, but at least one player on offense and defense from the Sark era that I would add to this 2025 team. And then in the last segment, I make a bold prediction. And I know I said we don't do suspense on Locked On Longhorns, but if I tell you what the bold prediction is about, you'll be able to guess what the bold prediction is. So I make a bold prediction. I promise I'm not trying to get you to watch to the end. I'm just going to make a bold prediction involving Texas athletics. Right. All right. All of that and more on today's episode, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we're looking at the Pro Football Focus Top 101. And still nobody has told me to cancel my Pro Football Focus subscription. I guess that's on me at this point, but I'm probably not going to cancel it. It's just such good information on there, and then you got the draft coming up leading into next season. Yes, $26 a month, but like I said, it's a lot of good information on there. And then the underrated part of it is like it allows you to be such a nerd because anytime you're in like a sports debate or a sports argument, you know, it's just like you can just run to the numbers. You should be able to make your point without it, right? But like the other day, we were arguing in the group chat about is Jalen Ramsey still a good corner? And it's like, let me just go to Pro Football Focus and show you that Jalen Ramsey's still a good corner. So I think it's worth the $26 a month. You know what I'm saying? It gives me a lot to talk about on here as well. But Pro Football Focus, obviously not the Bible, but still a really good source in terms of football analysis. They dropped their top 101 players of the season, and you would expect that a team like the Longhorns, who made it to the semifinals and the playoffs, a team with one of the most talented rosters in college football, I would say arguably, but I think Ohio State proved they were the most talented. You would expect that they had a lot of really good players this season, right? And a lot of really good performances that led them to the semifinals and the playoffs, and they did. So when you look at it, once again, the top 101 players from Pro Football Focus, not sure why there's 101, not sure why there was 101 Dalmatians, but, maybe 101 looks better than 100, right? When you look at it going into, well, not going into the season, but you look at it, right, this list, I think Ohio State had the most with 12 players. Like, I mean, over half their starters were on this list. Like I said, that team was ridiculously talented. So don't tell me that Ryan Day is not the second best coach in college football. Maybe the second best recruiter, but that team was loaded, bro. Like that team was insane. And I think Texas may have had the next. I think we had 7. So Texas may have been second with 7, but Ohio State was far and away number 1 with 12. When you look at it, Texas faced, out of 101 players, Texas faced 28 players on the list, right? 28 players out of the top 101 Texas faced this year. And it should have been 29 because Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver from Arizona State, made the list, but he was hurt in the playoff game and did not play against us. So if you look at that, that's 28 divided by 101. That is 28%, bro. Texas faced 28% of the top 101 players in college football, according to Pro Football Focus. So next time anyone wants to tell you that our schedule was trash or weak or Texas didn't play anybody, that's just another argument in your tool belt. You know what I mean? Like, maybe the teams weren't the best, but Texas faced a lot of really good players in college football in 2024. Now, of course, 12 of those, you know what I'm saying, were from Ohio State, but Colorado State had representation, Arkansas, Texas A&M, Florida, Vanderbilt. Um, weren't any Oklahoma players on there? I might have mentioned all the teams. Clemson and then Arizona State, yeah. I think those are all the teams that had representation, which led to a total of 28. And like I said, if Jordan Tyson would have played in the Arizona State game, that would have been 29. Now, 5 of these players are going to be on Texas' schedule in 2025. 5 players that they played against last year will be on their schedule again in 2025. Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State, 2 top 10 players on this list. You will face off against them in the first game of the season. Diego Pavia and Eli Stowers, right, quarterback and tight end from Vanderbilt. You will face off against them again next season, this time at home. And then Jake Slaughter, the center from Florida, decided to return for his senior season. And so you will match up against him in the swamp next year. 5 players from the top 100 list, 101 list that you faced against last year, you will play again this year. All right, now let's get to the Longhorns that made the top 101 players in Pro Football Focus for the 2024 season. Start with Jahdae Barron, number 7, right? And just a huge bet on yourself season. Somebody that was listed largely as a slot corner, somebody that did not have a great end to the season last year or in 2023, largely due to injury. A leader on this team that said, this is a team that's capable of winning a national championship. I want to come back and help them do that, but I also want to show that I can play on the outside and, you know, scouts and NFL teams and NFL evaluators don't have to put me in a box. You know, guys like Mel Kiper and Todd McShay don't have to put me in a box because I can do everything on this defense. And he came back in 2024 and showed that at a high level. This is what Pro Football Focus had to say about Jahdae Barron, the number 7 player in the country this year, according to Pro Football Focus. And Travis Hunter was number 1, I guess, if like anybody's wondering. After spending the majority of his career in the slot, Barron moved to the outside this past season and was college football's best defensive back, evidenced by winning the Thorpe Award. He finished 2024 as the most valuable non-quarterback in the nation, according to our wins above average metric, while his 90.8 Pro Football Focus grade led all Power 4 cornerbacks. I like to say Core 4, but, you know, nitpicking. He only allowed a 33.1 passer rating in coverage last season. For reference, spiking the ball every play would net a 39.6 rating. I think they need to fix that, right? Like if spiking the ball is more productive than throwing into coverage, then something's off with the numbers. Something's off with the rating. Nonetheless, that just paints the picture of how valuable and how good Jahdae Barron was last season. That spiking the ball would have been a more productive play, according to passer rating, than throwing the ball against Jahdae Barron, one of the best players in the country, coming in at number 7 on Pro Football Focus's top 101. And this is just the one thing that pains me about college football, man. Because if this was the NFL, this is the guy you don't let leave the building for 10 to 15 years. And instead, we never will see him in a Texas jersey again. So tough, bro. Like, just to watch players like him and Bijan just walk away, like, hurt. Byron Murphy, Toronto, just, it hurts, man. Number 14 on the list out of 101 players, Kelvin Banks. Banks has starred at left tackle for the Longhorns ever since his true freshman season and had his best year yet as a junior. He finished as the most valuable Power 4 tackle, according to Pro Football Focus's wins above average metric, while his 88.2 Pro Football Focus grade was 6th amongst all tackles in the country. Making that even more impressive is the fact that Banks was outstanding against elite competition, posting a combined 86.9 Pro Football Focus grade against Michigan, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Clemson, Ohio State, and 2 games against Georgia. So he was at his best against the best competition. That's also what I forgot to mention. Michigan was one of those teams that had like 3 or 4 players on the top 101. I forgot to mention them earlier. That Texas went against. and that Kelvin Mace was dominant against. Number 23 on the list, Andrew Makuba. Makuba, the transfer coming over from Clemson, right? Makuba was the glue that held Texas' elite secondary together. The Clemson transfer finished third in the FBS with a 90 overall grade while picking off 5 passes and breaking up 6 others. In fact, he allowed just 74 yards as the primary defender all season. His presence brought everything the Longhorns were hoping for after they struggled to defend the pass in 2023, right? Which culminated in that huge game with Michael Penix Jr. going off for 400. Solidifying himself as a top 10 pick against our Texas Longhorns, Andrew Makuba came over and helped shut that down, right? Number 33, defensive lineman Alfred Collins from Texas. Collins filled the void of Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy about as adequately as one can do, earning an 87.2 Pro Football Focus grade. The big 320-pounder led Texas defensive line to being one of the best in America. On the season, Collins recorded 27 successful run stops with only 2 missed tackles on 38 attempts. When he got his hands on you, you were going down. Huge season from Alfred Collins, who we've been asking for more from. We've been asking more from Alfred Collins for about 4 years. And he had a huge season this season. He delivered on everything we had been asking for. I'm going to get y'all some subtitles. I'm sorry. Michael Taft from Texas, of course. Taft paired with Andrew Makuba to form arguably the nation's premier safety duo this season. The only argument you could probably make against that is, you guessed it, Ohio State, right? With Leighton Ransom and Caleb Downs. His 89.8 coverage grade tied for second amongst core 4 safeties. He collected 2 interceptions and 8 pass breakups while allowing an outstanding 45.8 passer rating into his coverage. A little bit worse than spiking the ball, but still really good. Taft returns to Texas in 2025 with the hopes of winning a national championship. Number 60, edge rusher Colin Simmons, Texas, true freshman. Simmons immediately showed why he was a top 15 recruit coming out of high school, finishing his true freshman season as the 5th most valuable edge defender in the nation. According to Pro Football Focus's wins above average metric, his 18.6% pressure rate was 13th amongst FBS edge rushers, while his 90.2 pass rushing grade was 16th. Really good stuff from the true freshman. And then last but not least on the list from the Longhorns, defensive lineman Vernon Broughton from Texas. Broughton finished this season as the 8th highest graded defensive tackle in the nation. It was one of the Longhorns' most productive pass rushers. He generated 32 pressures, 4 sacks, and a solid 12.9% pass rush win rate. He showed up in a big way in the playoffs with 9 pressures and an 83.8 pass rush grade across 3 games against Clemson, Arizona State, and Ohio State. So that was Pro Football Focus's top 100 players, well represented by the Texas Longhorns, who had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players on the list, as high as number 7 with Jahdae Barron. All right, quick word from our sponsors, and then we do a little exercise, right? No stretching, no lifting, but we do a little exercise. One player from the Sark era, at least 1 year removed from the University of Texas on offense and defense, that I would add to this 2025 team. I would like you to be thinking about it as well. I'm sure you already are. Who would be your one player on offense and defense? We discuss after the break. All right, today's episode of Locked On Longhorns brought to you by WayFair. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look to start this year, WayFair has everything you need, all within your budget. There's something for every style in every home. No matter your space or budget, WayFair makes it easy to tackle your New Year's home goals with endless inspiration for every space and Yeah. Shout out to WayFair. Give your home the refresh it needs with WayFair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. WayFair. Every style, every home. Hook 'em horns. Once again, y'all, to all my aspiring podcasters, content creators out there, please read the ad before you get on your platform and read the ad. I'm not perfect. Even 3 years in, I'm still learning. One player, at least 1 year removed from the Texas Longhorns football team within the Steve Sarkisian era that I would add to this roster in 2025. I thought long and hard about this. I did. But I have my answer. And I hope you agree with my answer. Starting on the offensive side of the ball, because why not, right? My first thought was, of course, Bijan, right? I feel like he's been the best player in the Steve Sarkisian era. Why not add Bijan? But I felt like that was too easy. I just kind of felt like that was too easy. Like, yeah, Bijan. So I didn't say Bijan, but my real answer is Bijan. And then I thought, well, what about Adonai Mitchell, right? Because when you think about it and you look at this team last year, you had Matthew Golden, certainly, was that guy that you could go to in any situation. But I felt like we were missing another playmaker on the outside that in any given moment, as I've said, against any coverage, man, zone, press man, blitz, third down, second down, first down, fourth down, whatever it is, no matter what the situation is, you can go to that guy. And Matthew Golden proved to be that guy in a lot of situations. But I thought having a guy like Adonai Mitchell, especially on last year's team, especially down the stretch where, it felt like DeAndre Moore and Ryan Wingo were good, but the only guy you had consistently game in and game out was Matthew Golden. I felt like Adonai Mitchell would be a good player to add to a team that's vying for a championship and trying to figure out how to get over the hump. But then I looked at it. I'm like, you got Ryan Wingo coming back. You got DeAndre Moore coming back. You got Silas Bolden coming back. You're bringing in 3 5-stars, right? Jamie French, Khalil Lockett, and Michael Terry at the position. You should have enough at wide receiver. So I was like, okay, no Adonai Mitchell. And then I thought about Xavier Worthy, right? Just because having a weapon like that, you can't really replace that. We thought we were replacing it with Isaiah Bond, but Xavier Worthy is just a better wide receiver than Isaiah Bond. And plus, Isaiah Bond dealt with the injuries. But he just has a superpower that you can't replace. It's like Deshaun Jackson. It's like Tyreek Hill. Like, you just can't replace somebody that fast and that explosive down the field. So I thought, okay, well, maybe you add Xavier Worthy to the team. But for the same reason I didn't add Adonai Mitchell, I didn't add Xavier Worthy, because it's like when you have 6 wide receivers that talented, you should be, be able to find a way to make plays, right? And so it didn't feel like that would really help the team as much as to adding somebody to another position. I could have thought about Jatavian Sanders just because you're losing Gunnar Helm, but I think we'll be fine at the tight end position, right? I went with running back. Obviously, Arch Manning, I think he's going to be solid. Pretty much our whole offensive line we lost this year, so they didn't qualify. But even then, I think the offensive line will be good. Cole Hudson, DJ Campbell, Trevor Guzme, Brandon Baker. I think we'll be fine on the offensive line. Running back is where I have a question mark. And people are saying, John, Cedric Baxter's coming back. He is. And I think Cedric Baxter, I hope Cedric Baxter is going to be good. But once again, we cannot discount the fact that Cedric Baxter is coming off of a major knee injury where he tore multiple ligaments in his knee. To think that he's just going to step on the field against Ohio State and be one of the best running backs in the country, it could happen. But I'm not 100% sure it will happen. Usually those things take a little bit of time, right? Regardless of how good you look in training. Like I said, I would assume he's not going to play in the spring game or practice that much. So, his first real action after tearing up his knee will be playing against Ohio State and playing in real game action for the Texas Longhorns. And I just think it may take him a little bit of time to get back to that Cedric Baxter that we were used to seeing before the injury. And so I'm looking at running back like, I'm not sure what we're going to have going into the season, right? Because of Cedric Baxter's injury. Then behind him, you got Jared Gibson, you got Christian Clark coming back, but off a torn Achilles. I'm not sure if you just have that playmaker in that room. And that's why my answer on offense would be Jonathan Brooks. That 8-game stretch he had in 2023, I thought he should have been like damn near the Heisman. I mean, I know that, Bryce Young, I think, won the Heisman that year. But either way, I thought that stretch that he had in like 2023 or 2023, that may have been Jaden Daniels. Either way, I thought that stretch that he had in 2023 was some of the best we've ever seen. I was screaming Heisman until we lost to Oklahoma, but I was screaming Heisman for Jonathan Brooks. What he did in those 8 games after he became the starter, some of the best running back play I've ever seen. And yes, I watched Bijan and a lot of good running backs at the University of Texas. And I think if you could add that version of Jonathan Brooks with Arch Manning, with the receivers you have on the outside, this offense would be absolutely unstoppable. I want to take you back down memory lane to what Jonathan Brooks did in those 8 games, right? After not starting against Rice and Alabama, he came back against Wyoming, 21 carries for 164 rushing yards. Baylor, 18 carries for 106 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, also 18 yards receiving. Kansas, 21 carries, 218 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 catch for 23 yards. Oklahoma, 22 carries, 129 yards, a touchdown, 34 yards receiving. Houston, 99 yards rushing, 51 yards receiving. BYU, 98 yards receiving, a touchdown, 4 receptions for 40 yards. Kansas State, 112 rushing yards, a touchdown. And TCU, in the game he got hurt, 104 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 74 yards receiving. He had 3 plays of over 60 yards in an 8-game span. Jonathan Brooks was absolutely dominant. I would add him to this football team with Arch Manning, those wide receivers we have on the outside, and I would not look back. And even if Cedric Baxter was healthy, that's a hell of a running back too to have, and you could use both of them. Then on defense, I would go with Byron Murphy, right? Obviously, the hole going into this season is at defensive tackle, and Byron Murphy was just an absolute fucking animal in 2023. When you look what he was able to do, right? This is how many games? 15 games. He had a 91.1 defensive grade overall, an 80.5 run defensive grade overall, a 91.5 pressure grade from the defensive tackle position. In 15 games, he had 45 pressures. I'm going to say that again. In 15 games from the defensive tackle position, he had 45 pressures, 6 sacks, 36 hurries. Byron Murphy in 2023 produced one of the best defensive tackle seasons you will ever see in college football. It wasn't Ndamukong Suh win the Heisman type season, you know what I mean? Or should have won the Heisman type season. It wasn't that. But it was one of the best defensive tackle seasons you will ever see in college football. 45 pressures from the defensive tackle spot. I mean, that is absolutely insane. Like, he was a man, a grown man amongst boys that year. And yeah, you add him to this team with the sophomore year Colin Simmons on that line, and you start to look like you have that pass rush that I talked about on yesterday's episode, where you got that Eagles, where you can just overwhelm any quarterback, where you can have Patrick Mahomes running for his life and have him look like a shell of himself. Byron Murphy and Colin Simmons at the same time. Good luck to any offense out there of trying to do anything against these Texas Longhorns, right? So Jonathan Brooks and Byron Murphy, I would add to this 2025 roster, and I have no doubt in my mind that we would win a national championship if we had these 2 players on the 2025 team. Quick word from our sponsors, and then I give my bold prediction. You made it this far on the Texas basketball team. The men, Texas basketball team. All right, so we all expected this Texas basketball team to be a little bit better this year, and part of it is just they're not as good as we thought they were, but also the SEC is really good, right? And we're learning that firsthand. But Texas desperately needs a win, right? They are 15-9 right now. They are 4-7 in the SEC, and they are heading down a dangerous path of possibly not even making the tournament. Alabama is the number 2 team in the country. They are 20-3, 9-1 in conference. They are a 4.5-point favorite in the Moody Center. Think about that. They are favored by almost 5 points in the Moody Center. That is crazy, right? But Texas, their back is against the wall. They desperately need a win, and I think they get it. We just watched the Texas women beat South Carolina on Sunday in the Moody Center. I think they left a little bit of the magic. I think there's still a little bit of pixie dust in the Moody Center. Their backs against the wall. Ronnie Terry gets one of the biggest wins of his career, and they beat Alabama tonight in basketball in the Moody Center. If they lose by 20, please don't come back to me. You know what I'm saying? I needed a third segment. But bold prediction, Texas wins tonight against Alabama in basketball. Has the fans feeling a little bit better about this team. They follow up what the women did against South Carolina on Sunday and beat one of the best teams in the country tonight at home in Austin. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Longhorns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hook 'em. Peace.